that the bill be read a third time now. On debate, Senator Black, Ontario.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable collègue, bon après-midi. Je suis heureux de vous voir en bonne santé. Honourable Senators, I rise today at third reading of Bill C-16, an act to amend the Canadian Dairy Commission Act. As honourable Senators are aware, this measure was announced on May 5th, along with other measures to assist Canada's farmers and food processors who are facing severe pressures brought on by COVID-19. The other support included $77 million to help food processors purchase personal protective equipment and enact other health and safety measures, $125 million for beef and pork producers to adapt to market changes, and a $50 million surplus food purchase program. Of these measures, the credit increase for the Canadian Dairy Commission is the only one that requires legislation to be enacted. So as much as I would love to talk about the entire suite of supports for the agricultural industry, I will limit my remarks to this specific measure. Bill C-16 aims to address the dairy sector's most urgent needs and to bring much-needed assistance to our dairy farmers. They are essential to our food supply, and they deserve our full support. One of the major challenges the farming industry is facing right now is the volatile demand for their products. When the crisis first hit, consumers began panic buying and grocery store shelves quickly emptied. Within a matter of weeks, and once kitchen fridges were full, demand then plummeted. Dairy farmers were very severely impacted. Demand for their milk and milk products nosedived following the mass closures of restaurants, hotels, and schools. These buyers had been significant purchasers of their cream, their cheese, and other dairy products. As well, beyond the farm gate, logistical challenges right down the supply chain developed. By the end of March and the first half of April, after schools sent students home and restaurants had closed their doors and hotels emptied, dairy producers found that they now had no choice but to dispose of surplus raw milk. Honourable colleagues, as you might imagine, it breaks a dairy farmer's heart, and I'm sure many Canadians' hearts as well, to dump milk that they have worked so hard to produce, spending long hours in the barns and in the fields. Many of these farms have been in families for generations. The farm is not only their livelihood, it is their home and it is their lives. Across Canada, farmers have done everything they can to find a home for the milk and milk products. Farmers are giving back. In Quebec, producers donated 1 million litres of milk to food banks. In Saskatchewan, dairy producers donated products made from 175,000 litres of milk to food banks across the province, enough for 38,000 pounds of cheese, yogurt, and milk. In Newfoundland, 2 dairy farmers joined forces with a local distributor to give away milk at a drive-through in a local arena parking lot. On Prince Edward Island, farmers gave away blocks of cheese and cartons of milk. And in Ontario, dairy farmers contributed an additional 200 litres of milk to food banks across this province. As I said, farmers are giving back. To all those farmers and others who took the opportunity to help others during this time of crisis, even while you may have been worried about your own livelihood, on behalf of many, thank you. Additionally, provincial milk marketing boards implemented measures to reduce raw milk production and prevent the dumping of milk through a reduction of monthly credit days and quota cuts. Honourable Senators, the challenge of a changing demand is not new to Canadian dairy industry. In fact, one of the major reasons that supply management was implemented 50 years ago was to stabilize the volatile demand and surpluses that were wreaking havoc on dairy farmers' incomes. Over the years, the industry has succeeded in stabilizing markets, thanks in large part to the great work of the Canadian Dairy Commission. The CDC plays an important role in stabilizing dairy production by setting a national quota and, just as importantly, balancing seasonal supply and demand through a suite of programs. In periods of lower demand and high production, as has happened in April and May, the CDC purchased butter from dairy processors, and then they sell it back when demand improves. To operate these programs, the CDC borrows from the government, with borrowing costs covered by the dairy producers and the marketplace. The Canadian Dairy Commission Act currently limits the CDC's line of credit to $300 million. The bill before us proposes to raise that limit to $500 million. I've already outlined the severe impact that wide swings in demand have on our producers, but the current crisis was unforeseen. 3 months ago, neither the CDC nor farmers could have planned for the shutdown of their mass purchasers. In order to help restore stability in the marketplace, the CDC, after discussion with and support from dairy producers, processors, and provincial milk marketing boards, made a request to the Minister of Agriculture to increase its line of credit to extend existing programs and create new ones, such as the storing of cheese. This increase in funds will augment its storage programs and capacity and help the industry balance supply and demand variations. It will allow the CDC to purchase cheese from processors, similar to its existing program for butter, and the processors, by contractual agreement, can then buy back that cheese when it is needed in the marketplace. This credit extension will give the industry some breathing room until the crisis has eased and will equip the CDC with the means to manage future crises. It will minimize food waste, and it will ensure that we can enjoy the fruits of our dairy farmers' hard work. I will note that another piece of legislation would be required to return the credit limit back to $300 million. However, the Minister of Finance annually approves the CDC's budget each year, which includes its borrowing capacity. The legislation provides for a maximum limit, but would not automatically grant borrowing access to all $500 million. Dairy Farmers of Canada have welcomed this announcement, saying it will help offset the impact of bottlenecks in the supply chain that have prevented the smooth operation of our dairy value chain. It will allow milk products to get from the farm to the store shelves, to schools and restaurants and hotels quickly when demand increases. This bill is delivering for our dairy industry in their time of need. As dairy farmers will tell you, and as we heard earlier today, a dairy cow is not like a kitchen tap. You can't turn her off. Canadian dairy is an industry that gives so much back to our economy. Over $6 billion in sales at the farm gate, almost $15 billion in processor sales, and the provision of tens of thousands of jobs. I am supporting this bill in order to underscore my strong support for our dairy farmers. Honourable colleagues, many measures are being taken to assist individuals and businesses during this unprecedented time. Bill C-16 is targeted to help dairy farmers and dairy processors. As I said, it will increase the CDC's borrowing capacity to $500 million and provide a safety net for our dairy farmers until such time as they can return to providing their products to customers who are currently not in a position to purchase them. I ask you, honourable senators, to pass C-16 without delay so that our dairy farmers can be assured of assistance while we all wait out this crisis and eventually return to what will inevitably be a new normal. I said at the beginning that I would limit my remarks to the legislation before us related to the Canadian Dairy Commission and not other measures announced for the agriculture and ongoing issues in the industry. However, I do want to say that while I'm pleased that the government is helping Canadian agriculture, much more needs to be done. Dairy, pork, and beef are getting some help, but other sectors that are struggling, notably grains and oilseeds, as well as horticulture and many others, were not helped by the May 5th announcement. I am happy to sponsor and vote in favour of this bill, recognizing that it is only a small part of the support needed by the Canadian agricultural industry. At the end of my speech on Bill C-15 on May 1st, I said that I hoped we would be back in this chamber in short order to pass legislation to support agriculture. Well, here we are. But I have to reiterate my wish and say that I hope we will be back again very soon to debate more legislation to help all Canadian farmers and processors. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.